Hi, and welcome to the set of About the Authors TV. I'm your host, Jake Brown. We're excited to share with you a preview of a few of the upcoming episodes starring the best-selling authors in the world that you'll see in full this winter on seasons 1 and 2 of About the Authors TV. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoy.
I wish I was organized enough to have the mafia board and the FBI strings and everything. Um, for me, writing is I do like to plan a book as much as I can, but stuff like relationships and stuff that's very organic, is it right for this character to have a sister? How much younger should she be? Why? Why are there sisters and no brothers? That kind of thing. And who gets to be important in the story? Like if you're going to write a big family, everybody can't be equally important. So sometimes I will be writing and I'll say, you know what, I'm just going to kill off the brother. There's no point for her to have a brother, and I'll take him out. Or I'll say, if she had a sister, then they could like reflect off each other. I'm very like book smart and not visually smart, and like my husband had to set up the light that I use for these interviews. I always say like a dog could put something together faster than I could, but if I can read it, I learn it. So I'll have like the Mirabelli family, and hear the parents and the children and the first wife and all that stuff, and keep it straight that way. That's a lesson I learned. My first book was set in a real town of Eastham, Mass. And another book is set on Martha's Vineyard, real island. But I've learned to fictionalize my towns based very closely on a real town, because I want the authenticity of that place. I want the sensibility. I want to know where the firehouse is. I want to know who's at the bar at 5 o'clock at night and who's closing it down at 2. And I really want to get that feeling and that authentic flavor. So I do always visit my settings, and then I fictionalize them just in case I need to move the school from here to there so it's closer for plot reasons. So all my fictional towns are very closely modeled on real towns based on Lubeck, Maine.
I always make up a town because there might be certain things you need characters to do that they actually can't do in an existing town. I also make up a town so that if I'm using an existing town and I put in a stop sign instead of a stop light, I don't have readers writing me saying that's not there. So I like my freedom of being able to make things work the way I want them to work. But that said, a lot of times I'll base them on an area that I'm familiar with. My husband and I go to Tennessee every year. He has family who retired from North Carolina, family who moved from North Carolina. That's where they were all actually started from, his parents. So we visit there sometimes. We see the really small dirt floor house that his grandparents lived in up in the hills. So, I sort of based around that area. And the in the visitation series, Jamie lives up in the mountains in a house similar to that, but then you have the town built around a lake. So you can visit something like that once or twice, get a really good feel for it, and then make it your own and make up what you need to. My mom and dad had I joked that it was a summer shack in Kentucky, Williamstown, Kentucky. And it was literally one bedroom, a tiny, tiny bathroom you could barely turn around in, but you were right on the lake. And so we had a bunch of bunk beds in the room that my two sisters and brother and I slept in. My mom and dad had a fold out couch they slept on. And you would get up in the morning and change out of your pajamas into your bathing suit. You left your bathing suit on all day. You took your bath in the lake, and you would literally put your bathing suit on in the morning when you woke up, and you left it on all day. You bathed in the lake. You ate outside at a picnic table most often. And then, when you got ready for bed, you put your pajamas back on. That was lake life. We loved it. We swam all day long. Dad took us water skiing and tubing. And, you when dad wasn't there to take you out on a boat, right, when he was working, he would just walk along the shore and collect crawdads or shells, mussel shells. And so I have a real feel for lake life. We spent every summer there from the time I think I learned to water ski when I was 6 years old. So, you've lived that enough, but I did not want to make it the lake I grew up on for the same reason. So I made up a lake, which I wanted to be Paragon, and they made me call Buckhorn.
That whole series it came about in a very strange way. I was going to the Romantic Times convention, and my first book, Sweet Tea and Secrets, was coming out. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. It was my first time ever going to that convention. And so I decided to go from a publisher's perspective, where I was just there, showing my book, even though it was, Montlake, but just showing my book and all. So I was in the vendor area, and a girlfriend of mine was supposed to go with me, and she canceled at the last minute. Well, this young lady, Kelsey Browning, I had met in DC about 3 years earlier, and she was living over in Qatar. Her husband was an IT guy, and they lived abroad. And I had met her at the RWA convention in DC, and we hit it off. And we had sent a couple notes and, followed each other on Facebook, but we didn't really know each other. Well, I was flying out to Calabasas for the bank, and I get this note out of the blue from Kelsey. And she said, "Hey, I see you said you're going to LA. I live in LA now." And I said, "Oh my gosh, well, I'm not really going to be in LA. I'm further, I'm in Calabasas." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm right there." And she said, "Let's do lunch." I said, "Okay." So we got together and we did lunch. And as we're having lunch, I mentioned that my friend had bailed on me, but I was going to the convention. And she said, "Well, I'll come and help you." I was like, "Okay." So I don't even know her, but I'm inviting her to stay in my room with me, and we're going to do this convention together. Well, thank goodness we really hit it off. It was wonderful. But as we worked through that weekend and we're making friends and we're learning things, and we're both early in our careers, so it was kind of the perfect situation for both of us. We're giggling in the middle of the night, just telling old stories and stuff. And she starts talking about how her ex-brother-in-law was just such a poop, and her dad, or not her dad, her mom and her sister and her were like plotting against him. They're like, "Well, maybe we could, have somebody off them." And people dream about that. They were not really going to do it. And Kelsey says, "Yeah, we could do that." And her mom says, "Well, maybe I should do it, because then I'll go to jail and I'll get 3 squares and it'll be fine." And Kelsey says, "Well, that's probably better because I look horrible in orange and I have a little boy." And so it was a big joke. Well, that played through my head all night because she's such a great storyteller. So as she's telling that story, it's so animated and hysterical. And it's just like talking off her head. It's not anything that was ever really going to happen. It was not a real plot. But I woke up that morning, I said, "We have got to write that book where some granny goes to jail. It'll be hysterical." And so we were like, "Okay." Well, we started plotting it right then and there. We started plotting in for a penny that night at the RT convention. And Lillian, Fairview was born then, and we wrote that book together. We never had a hiccup. We never had an argument. The girlfriends, these old ladies, like the Golden Girls, there's Abby Ruth, who's the rough and tough Texan, and Kelsey's a Texan. So you can rest assured Abby Ruth really carries a lot of Kelsey. But we both wrote all of the characters. We didn't split them off. Maggie is probably a whole lot more like me, a Virginia gal, and kind of likes to fix things and lower key. But we both wrote every single voice. We shared it. It was always about the story. And when we finished writing it and published it, and we self-published it because we had other books under contract. So I was with Montlake and she was with Carina Press. So we put this out on our own, and we dedicated it to her mama. And we said, as soon as we figured out the postage to heaven, we were going to get that book to her. But it is definitely a hoot. They're very Southern, very funny, lighthearted. And when we put it out, we said people are either going to absolutely adore this series or they're going to hate it because it's very stereotypical. And people love it. They love the grannies, and they get into a lot of trouble, but they're all white collar crimes, Fit to Be Tied, which all of these books now have new titles. It has been repackaged.
Seasoned Southern Sleuths, right?
Yes. And so that gave us a nice opportunity to incorporate some of the Southern recipes that are in the books anyway. So we've done that. We've highlighted those recipes and restaged them. So I think now that one is catfishing and collard greens or something. I can't even get the new title straight. But in that one, it's a dating crime. Somebody's using this dating online dating as a scheme to get information. And there's like a beekeeping date. I mean, there's just silly stuff, and it's set at Halloween. And, you know, Abby Ruth is dressed like the Wicked Witch of the West, and she's got a little monkey in diapers on her shoulder, and they're taking the bad guy down. So they were just a total laugh. We sent lots of free copies to some of the cancer wards that we were familiar with, because we felt like they were the lighthearted kind of thing that you needed to escape. Kelsey and I took a 3.5-week tour, starting in Virginia, going down to Georgia, further south, and then all the way up to Michigan. We stayed at the Grand Hotel up in Mackinac Island, and then worked our way back down. And I think we ended up with 17 states, but we dropped books at little free libraries. And we dropped copies of In for a Penny. And then we brought books from our friend authors, that we had them contribute books. And so we dropped one of our books in one of theirs in every free library that we stopped in. And it was the best time. We spread so much joy. It brought so much joy to us. I mean, if I could do that every year, that's one thing I would do every single year.
The wedding dress came to me on a girls' weekend outside of Nashville, Tennessee. So some Twitter friends, we said, let's get together. And then we said, hey, let's not just say it, let's do it. Next thing you know, we're planning a weekend together in Gallatin, Tennessee. Is that right? Gallatin? Is that outside of Nashville?
Yeah, Gallatin is, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we were in Gallatin, Tennessee. And we were talking about our host's daughter getting married. And she said, boy, she put on that wedding dress. We just knew. I was gone. Immediately I was like, ooh, a family wedding dress, 100-year-old wedding dress. Ooh, they all wore it. What did that look like? And they started talking about business, because one of them was a VP of marketing, and one of them has a former lawyer, and our host had been the former president of Borders, and they were off talking about business. And I go, hey guys, what about a wedding dress that, like, I don't know, 4 women wear like over 100 years? And they said, well, yeah, Rachel, you should work on that. And then later they came back to me and like, that's a good idea. Yeah. But it was the one that gave me the chills. And so I had read a split time novel by Susan Meisner called Shape of Mercy. And I was fascinated by looking back in time to see how it impacted the present. And if we all could, wouldn't we want to go back and talk to our ancestors and go, why did you decide to do that? Because that's impacted me today. You know, you moved from Ohio to California, or from California to Ohio, or you divorced that guy and married this guy, or that woman, and now there's me, or there, right? So every decision that our ancestors made lead us to where we are. We don't have to be trapped by it, but it certainly has guided who we become. So that's what fascinated me the most. It's kind of like a unique form of time travel. So I conceived of Emily in 1912 and then Charlotte in 2012. And I knew that I wanted them to be like unconnected. They did not know grandmother, granddaughter. So Emily is Charlotte's great-grandmother. And so originally I thought it's kind of boring to have the dress pass through the family, because that's what you would expect. What if the dress kind of moves mysteriously, kind of magically, supernaturally, and finds the right woman? And kind of the hook is that it fits every woman who tries it on without being altered. And so I actually did go to a wedding dress display in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And there was a wedding dress from the 30s that 5 women wore, all different shapes and sizes, and it fit every single one of them. So it's possible, it's even possible. So that kind of became how I wanted to tell the story. And the story was in the dress and what the dress represented to each woman who wore it. And for me also, having a spiritual storyline in my books also represented how the gospel fits everyone who tries it on. So